Go live, go live, go live in the country. They're testing all the poop to see if it's got the COVID. Oh, feedback. Mute the YouTube stream. Right, thank you. Muted the YouTube stream. Well, that started quicker than usual. I haven't even got the intro queued up yet.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take calm as your reality is adjusted.
Good morning, global gulag. Are we nearly there yet? Yeah, I'm probably going to be coughing a lot tonight again, sorry. I apologise in advance. Good evening, ladies and chest feeders. Welcome back once again. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this Moon Day evening. Maybe I should just get that recorded and stick it on the end of the intro. Maybe I should just get an AI bot to do it for me. I could program an algorithm to just take a snapshot of the week's news and come up with a narrative script to link them all together, and then just use a text-to-speech program. And I could just sit back and, do nothing and let the AI software do it. Yeah, anyway, just being silly. Good evening, hello, welcome, well met, fellow, hail, greetings to everyone in the chat room. Society of Spectacle, mate, Bud was here. Gary can't get Skype connection and stuff tonight, so he will be in the chat room for a bit, hopefully until the internet cafe closes. And Taz is in the chat room. Hello, Taz. And Roscoe Pico Train. Hello. And the Rebel. Hello. I'm scrolling down quick. So says hello. Hello, mates. All aboard the crazy train. Now there's a weird synchronicity. Were you looking at my... I actually didn't add it to any playlists on it. I was listening to that only an hour ago. I played that because, we'll get into it at some point. Just some of the stuff I wanted to mention, I'd put in my notes about, a thing connected to trains. But anyway, all aboard the crazy train. Lowlands Pete's in the chat room with us tonight in the room. And the Rebel, hello again. That's me. And then Dinny Carr, hello, mate. Mascara Snake, hello. Stewie, hello, Stewie. And Days, he's in the room, in the chat room. Ridiculizer, hello. Oshamo69, hello. And David, hello. David Romero Hermo. I'm scrolling down. I think I've got as far as the chat room goes at the moment. Hello to everyone. Hello to all the lurkers. There may be some academic lurkers. You never know. They might still be lurking around to take more study notes for their research papers, which is something else I want to mention in a bit, if I remember to go through all my notes the way I've written them down. Anyway, I don't always. It stands how the conversation goes. Sometimes I diverge away from what I've got in my notes, and it's just like, yeah. The conversation has moved on. Hello, Lion Share, and Hive Mind Consciousness, a new being. Hello. And Big Al, if he's listening, I think he was in the chat the other night, and I forgot to say hello. And the lurker, the chat room ninja, if he's out there, hello to you. And Fizz, hello. Lurking and taking names, hello. We'll come back and mention why I was sort of alluding to the lurkers in chat rooms and stuff like that. Let me find screen share, and we'll do that one first in a moment after I mention the subtitle this week, and we'll get into why this particular subtitle I thought about calling it Astro-Turfing the illusion, but it's a little bit of, I suppose you could call it a tautology. It's sort of self-defeating. It's like describing itself. Astro-Turfing is in and of itself an illusion. So Astro-Turfing the illusion is sort of like it's an illusion to reinforce the illusion, if that makes sense. So it's sort of self-defeating. But then I thought, no, considering it's got connections into marketing and commercialism, which is its kind of soft surface and the way most people encounter it and experience what is now termed astroturfing is for marketing reasons, to sell shit. So I thought a better way to sort of encapsulate it is make it sound like it's an advert. Astroturfing, it's a game for all your family. And please note it says for all your family, not a game for all the family, because that would imply that a family would come together and, you know, sit and spend time together playing a game together. And that's, you know, what the game's good for, because it brings your family into one place, etc. No, this is a game, Astroturfing, that is designed, connected to other agendas that are about either usurping your family away from you, in other words, individuating everyone into their own little narcissistic, self-delusional bubble dimensions, where they can be not only no threat to the state and status quo, but also more easily manipulated because they have nobody else to correlate or corroborate their own experiences with, and also to usurp your entire potential genetic line. In other words, the way they interfere or try to insert themselves in your ability to have a family. You know, you've got two families in effect. You've got your own personal family, in other words, the progeny of your union with somebody else, somebody of the opposite sex, obviously, because that's the way it still works at the moment, mostly. And then you've got your existing family that you are a child of, you know. So this thing attacks both those elements. Astroturfing is detrimental to both those elements because it's fueling an illusion. It is an illusion to fuel a further illusion or to reinforce another illusion. So talking about that kind of thing, while we're talking about astroturfing, I suppose really I should sort of define the terms to begin with. Any good philosophical discussion, really, you should be defining terms at the beginning to make sure people know what you mean when you use certain words, what the definition you're adding to certain words, etc. Krishna, hello in the chat room. And I'm sure I saw another name pop up. Frantic, hello. You're frantic in the chat room. Yeah, definition of terms. What do people mean by astroturfing? This is a somewhat modern terminology that's been applied to an aspect of marketing or marketing psychology that represents the use of mostly modern media, because that's really where it emanates from. The advent of modern mass media has enabled a methodology that can be defined as what we call in astroturfing, but the technique is not only for modern technology. You know, the technique has been used multiple times throughout history in different ways, but the concept is to create a fake popularity around a product, service, idea, message, whatever, you know. Whatever the information or data is that you're attempting to persuade people about, you use astroturfing to try and make a claim or to provide justification and corroboration to your claim that it has validity. Because look, all these people agree with me. It's a simple, quick example of the kind of astroturfing marketing tactics that have been around for a long time. I'm sure a lot of people in the UK, well, if you're old enough, you probably remember this old TV marketing campaign. 8 out of 10 cats said their cats prefer insert brand name here, cat food. Yeah, that's astroturfing. Somewhat old school astroturfing because it didn't rely on the internet. This was from a time period before the internet, but it's the same tactic. They're making a claim that lots of people think it's great. Look how popular it is because we've got X number out of Y number that say they prefer this particular brand and think it's great. Marketing. In the modern age, that is obviously, what's a good word for it? Sublimating. Yeah, it's a good word. Sublimating. It has sublimated itself into this new modern technology that allows it to reach people quicker, more directly, and often in a way that's more personalized. So the message can be framed in a tailor-made style to suit the person receiving it, so it has a higher likelihood of success. And certainly when it comes to politics, in the modern age, astroturfing has absolutely been used to massive effect. And another simple example is just look at not the most recent selection process they had in the USA, but the one prior to that, where Mr. T, I'll refer to him as Mr. T, everybody loves it. It's so great. Everybody loves it. He had a really good tactic, and he obviously his team working for him and whatever were good at this kind of stuff. They were very successful at this kind of stuff, and they created a massive astroturfing campaign across the internet, which included roping in various celebrity talking heads, not necessarily celebrity in like a kind of mainstream Hollywood sense, but celebrity in the internet environment sense. So influencers, as they're now usually called, it's another definition of terms. Somebody who makes use of the internet or other mass media outlets to influence a viewing public to certain ideas, concepts, products, services, etc. That's astroturfing on a kind of dissipated form. Influencers can be paid to push certain products. So if you take just one influencer on their own, you can't exactly call that astroturfing because it's not a massive number. But if a company or a multi-channel network, which most of these people are joined to, it's a bit like pyramid marketing. If their network is paid by a lobbying group or whatever to push a certain political candidate, then lo and behold, all these influencers are working on a similar theme en masse. Their own style and presentation techniques will vary, so it makes it look like it isn't a singular mass movement, but the reality is they're all presenting the same basic principles or foundational arguments. That's astroturfing. They've been paid to talk about a particular political candidate and suggest that he's good and he's great and everybody loves him. The astroturfing, making it seem like something is popular when there is no real hard objective evidence of popularity amongst the masses. It is a fake generated popularity created by using such mainly modern techniques. I keep making that emphasis simply because of how much more effective it is as a tactic thanks to the internet age, internet technology. Social media especially, because social media can very successfully hide or mask the kind of what's referred to as native marketing tactics. Native marketing means a sales pitch presented in such a way that most of the audience, most people will not recognize it as a sales pitch. They'll think it's just somebody making a comment in a video. It will seem organic and genuine. That then gives it more potential validity in the mind of the receiver, so they're more likely to accept it as a good recommendation, etc. Again, marketing. It's like I'm not endorsing any particular manufacturer of ignition products, a lighter in other words, but I use this all the time. I find a much more reliable and in some fashions multi-purpose, because they're doing a lot of camping and being outdoors and stuff like that. Having one of these works a hell of a lot better than most of the other forms that you get available. Anyway, digressing. That was simply just to define Astro-Turfing. I think most people are aware of all this kind of stuff now. I think a lot of people have had a baptism of fire over the last year of catching up on a lot of these subjects and ideas and concepts that some people have been talking about for a long time. But a lot of it wasn't exactly popular. And the one thing about the truth is you don't ever really need to astroturf the truth. The truth is the truth. It stands on its own. It is unassailable by any question. So you don't need to astroturf for the truth. It's not exactly popular, and people interested in that kind of question and generally not popular. It's just an observation. I've been thinking about this over the last few weeks while I've been observing, like I do, looking at the media output, content output uploads from various people and whatever, watching the news and stuff like that. And I'm looking again at I know there's been a lot of censorship over this last year, and YouTube is particularly bad for it, as we're all, having been forced to get used to the way it's now so restrictive. But it's still consistently stuck to approximately around the same numbers in reference to the content on my channel. And I was looking at that and comparing it to some of the other people who have, how can I put it, weathered the storm of the kind of censorship shit that's been happening over all of this year. And I'm thinking, well, he's got several thousand subscribers. He does a live stream. He gets like 20 or 30 people watching. And after the live stream's concluded, when it's a video on his channel, the video accumulates a couple of hundred views. But he's got several thousand subscribers or more, 10, 15, 20, 50,000. The numbers pretty much stay the same in terms of what I've observed over the years, the way YouTube manipulates the numbers, because I don't accept the numbers as being de facto true, representative of the number of subscribers and viewers. They're not. They're manipulated by the YouTube system. But in general, you can look across YouTube and most of it is pretty much the same. It's about 1 in 10. So if somebody has 100 subscribers, they might get between 1 and 10 views on a video. About a tenth of their subscriber number. And that extrapolates out. If you've got 1,000 subscribers, you might get 100 views on a video. So I've sort of taken that on board, and I've been watching and seeing what my own numbers are, and watching and seeing what my own numbers are. And I'm like, as I say, as a general rule, I know it's not true across the board, and it varies slightly for certain topics and style of presentation and stuff, demographics and whatever. But as a general rule, it's about 1 in 10. And the same rule, the same formulation applies to the number of thumbs up. They'll get about 1/10 of the view number will actually engage with the thumbs up or down. And I'm looking at my own and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, mine's nowhere near that. Mine's like about a quarter. If I get like 200 views on a video, there'll be between 40 or more, 40 and 60 thumbs up on some of the more recent videos. Certainly for the past several months, it's been like that. And on average, I get about 400 to 500 views on the broadcast after it's gone live. And there'll be, again, about the same, about 60 thumbs or 60 engagements, 60 or 70, because there'll be a few thumbs down as well. That's not 1 in 10. I've got around 2,000 subscribers, but I get consistently about 400 to 500 views on every broadcast. That's one in 4, 1 in 5. what's going on here? I can watch somebody who's got 100,000 subscribers and they get the 1:10 ratio. I'm looking at my own channel, 2,000 subscribers, 500 views. What? Unless there's a whole lot of lurkers out there that are not subscribed, but they consistently come back to view this content for some reason. And the reason I'm sort of making this distinction is because some of those reasonings are not in any way genuine or organic, let's put it that way. You know, they're not coming because they have a genuine interest in the information and listening to us like talk about this stuff and, you know, trying to help people get informed and empowered and all that kind of good stuff. No, they're here almost like poachers, and they're here to amalgamate whatever they can out of what we're providing here as just a free service, because there's no monetization. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to force you to join a subscription for service. There's no paywall or anything like that. And I've made this point many times over the years, you know, to some individuals and groups out there, in particular, like the multi-channel networks, that is a threat to their business model, because they want to charge people money for this information, whereas I give it away for free. So they come here and they watch and they poach, and then they take my ideas or our idea, because it's not just me here talking, you know, there's a few of us that get together and talk about this stuff. They take these ideas, they go and stick them on another channel, which is monetized or which is a paywall environment. And this is why I wanted to make this sort of observation now, because I feel it's very relevant how the two go together. Astro-Turfing is primarily about marketing. So it rises out of that sort of consumerism industry of marketing psychology, you know, trying to persuade people that, yeah, you should buy our product or our service because look at how many people like it. And in a similar fashion, I'm pointing out like the numbers just don't stack up. Yeah, if you compare my channel to other channels who provide similar content but are monetized or are selling shit, they get a 1 in 10 ratio. I get a 1 in 4, 1 in 5. Yeah. Do you see how, you know, when people ask, oh, is so-and-so a shill? You know, are they doing it just for the money? Or are they an agent for one of the you know, states, the governments, whatever? And you're like, well, have a look at their numbers. Do they seem to be astroturfed to a degree? Is everybody sort of recommending each other? You know, you get that in a lot of the multi-channel network combinations. You know? They'll never recommend other channels or somebody who's completely outside of their usual environment, but they just keep recommending each other. Yeah, and I'm sure there'll probably be a few people out there go, oh, Cookie, you do that. You only ever recommend Steve to Goose. And obviously we're on Pete's channel on a Wednesday night as well. So yeah, I got into the habit of not recommending loads of other people simply because I don't feel I've seen a consistent output from them such that I feel comfortable and confident in recommending them to everyone, but also because just the way this internet environment and places like YouTube work, if you're not used to this environment yet, and also if you haven't got to the, how can I put it? What did Bob Marley say? Yeah, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. If you haven't got to the point of cognitive liberty such that you can go, well, yeah, I know there's people out there trying to sell shit, so I'm aware of that, so I don't need a third party coming to me and saying, here is a list of the people you're allowed to listen to, and here is a list of the people that you're not allowed to listen to, and you have to do what I'm telling you. And if you don't agree to my list, I will add you onto the list of people not to listen to. In other words, you're accepting an outside authority dictating your life to you in such a fashion that they are restricting your cognitive diet. You know, for nearly all the time I've been creating content, I'll keep occasionally making that cultural reference of, you know, what did the Dormouse say? Feed your head. You know, and it's lifting a line out of the classic song, you know, the White Rabbit song. What did the Dormouse say? Which is, again, lifted. It's a double lift. He's lifted from C.S. Lewis, you know, writing about Alice and the Looking Glass and all that stuff. When she encounters the Dormouse, yeah, the Dormouse said, feed your head. It didn't say go to somebody else and ask them what diet you should have for your head. That's your choice. Yeah, there may be somebody that you choose to listen to that I personally radically disagree with, but it's your choice. If you choose to listen to them, that's up to you. Many years ago, I did this a little bit when I first started in the YouTube environment back in like 2011. And I did get sort of fooled and nudged and tricked into some of that game playing where there's various camps that argue against each other about who's valid and who's good and who's authorized and who is or is not a shill. But as time went by, it started to become more and more apparent to me, and I've made this point many, many times. If you're still trying to tell your audience that they have to go to an external authority, whether it be a talking head on a screen or whatever, and that or outside authority will dictate to them that list, those two lists of who you can, who you can't listen to, then you're not really getting the job done in terms of helping people learn things and learn about themselves and learn about their own cognitive abilities, etc., etc. You're just reinforcing the system, because that is literally exactly what the system does. And when we're talking about things like censorship, coming up with all the shit about who is a shill and who is not a shill is exactly the same tactics. It's just that now you're presenting yourself as the king on the throne who is dictating who the public is allowed to listen to or not. So the reason I wanted to bring this up this week, I sort of mentioned it a bit last week, last Wednesday when we were chatting, but I think it's definitely getting pushed a lot more round at the moment because of the deliberate hypernormalization chaos effect that they've been playing on the media in general, but the internet in particular, for the last now more than a year. You know, that kind of thing goes back before then, but very much in particular about the current year situation. They are purposefully creating an environment of chaotic information where the validity of certain information or ideas gets bounced off into the distance of non-interest because of this ping pong game of like, well, who told you that? Where did you get that information from? Were they a shill? I heard it was that shill guy that mentioned that thing. Therefore, I'm just blanking the entire concept because shill guy mentioned it once. Yeah, black and white thinking, stark, defined lines between us and them thinking. Yeah. If you're not on the list, you're not considered valid. So anything you say or any ideas or any information you present, scrubbed, ignored, bounced off into the distance. You get that kind of, imagine playing the game Pong, you know, for the young people. It's a really ancient prehistoric video game. But it was the two paddles either side. Imagine trying to play that if the game was in 3 dimensions and the paddles went off into the distance. Eventually you wouldn't be able to see the ball bouncing backwards and forwards between them because it would be gone out of view. That's what they are looking at. That's how they are playing this hypernormalization chaos game. They deliberately insert ideas into this environment. Refer Cass Sunstein, Cognitive Infiltration. Again, something I've been talking about for a long time. Cognitive infiltration does not necessarily just mean them trying to infiltrate your group so that they can tell you their sales pitch argument because, you know, they got their foot in the door. No, cognitive infiltration means appropriating ideas so that then they can manipulate them and spin them and turn them into something that is no longer damaging to their narrative. So that sort of brings us a bit more up to current relevance. Let me write, if I do this first screen share, and I can then explain what I was saying about the lurker kind of thing. I'm not sure if we did actually sort of cover this and talk about it when it first sort of popped up in January, because that was when this article, this paper, anyway, became available from MIT. Sorry, did I miss something in the chat? Who am I ignoring? No, I won't get drawn in. Often comments in the chat can get taken completely out of context. So if you put me on ignore, mate, that's fine. That's up to you. I'll just pull silly faces at you, even though you can't hear me. This is an article that James Corbett has put up as his latest kind of like op-ed that he does once a month. But he's talking about that study paper that came out in January from MIT that sort of, you know, as part of their methodology, they make it clear that they spent time lurking, infiltrating and lurking in do the parenthesis bunny is in anti-vax groups, you know, so that they could observe and study their behavior. It's a bit like Attenborough. Here we are in the wilds of the internet, studying the anti-vaxxers. Yeah. But yeah, he pulls out some of the interesting points about this paper, and I know many other people have covered it. You know, I regularly talk about and recommend James Corbett Report and some of his work, the content that he puts out there, because I do think it's very valuable. It's very good. It's very on the ball with most of the topics that we're talking about. That's why I recommend him. Yeah, nothing to do with being part of a multi-channel network. In a very loose use of the word and definition of shill, you could claim that I shill for Corbett, but using that same loose definition, you could say that I shill for Shakespeare because of how much I talk about the use of the English language, modern English, which was heavily influenced by his writings. So therefore, am I shilling for Shakespeare? Yeah, anyway, before it descends into too much silliness. But just some of these points, yeah, that get drawn out by this study. The title of the paper was Viral Visualizations, How Coronavirus Skeptics Use Orthodox Data Practices to Promote Unorthodox Science Online. Yeah, it's a little, I'd have a few questions about the use of the words orthodox and unorthodox. Look up the definition of orthodox. And this sort of adds into the argument that science has become like a religious institution promoting a religious dogma, not real science. Anyway, yeah, in their study paper, let's see, the researchers aim, well informed, was to better understand how COVID skeptics use data visualizations to spread controversial understandings of the coronavirus pandemic on social media. So they were looking for, you know, data visualizations. I think that's a somewhat, a bit of an academic attempt to give jargon to memes. Are they talking about memes? Or graphic information, like what we call infographics, data visualizations? Or are they talking about how somebody like myself would look at some of their data and then interpret it into a way that is visualizing what the data represents. Don't know. Yeah, not exactly very clear, but anyway. Some of the conclusions are pretty obvious. He's writing, I'm looking for the main bit. For example, we are told that anti-maskers often reveal themselves to be more sophisticated, and they can even say the word sophisticated, in their understanding of how scientific knowledge is socially constructed. Scientific knowledge is socially constructed. Anyway, socially constructed in their ideological adversaries. Their approach to the pandemic is grounded in a more scientific rigor, not less. And the anti-mask users in particular were predisposed to digging through the scientific literature and highlighting the uncertainty in academic publications that media organizations elide. Uncertainty. Yeah, so again, this is like, scientific method. Science has to be falsifiable. So therefore you have uncertainty. So that uncertainty is part of the science process. It's part of the scientific method. They're uncertain if their hypothesis is true, so they create an experiment to test it. Anyway, there's a bit more to this, but he makes the point that their method for observing people was to just lurk and watch. And it is somewhat empowering to know that it's got to the stage that a study group from MIT went to the effort of actually doing this study and found that they couldn't actually contradict I'll call them the questioners. They're using the usual labels, anti-vaxxer, anti-mask, whatever. Well, I'll call them people who are asking questions. They couldn't deride those people. If anything, it was quite the opposite. There's a bit that James doesn't cover in this particular article, but I've seen other people cover it, was that those people who are pro-vax or pro-mask tend to have been more influenced by emotional content. So in other words, they fall prey to the emotional appeal fallacy, which even more so demonstrates how they have have a severe lack of the ability to use logical reasoning. In other words, they're not applying critical thinking. They are reacting with a knee-jerk reaction. They are in the state of amygdala hijack. They have been swamped by their emotions such that they follow the thing that is most emotionally appealing. What's the reason they're in that state, most likely? Because they've been terrified by the government system pumping propaganda at them 24/7, saturated across the entire country, across the world, near enough everywhere. It's like COVID, it's going to get you, COVID. It's under the bed, it's going to kill you in a minute, COVID. So why are they stuck in that emotional response? Because they've been pushed there with that terror campaign. And as Bernays pointed out 100 years ago, the best marketing techniques are based on emotional responses. Use emotional hooks. Promise people an emotional experience from buying a certain product. Forget their rationality. If you appeal to their rationality, then you better have a product that is actually really good at what it does and is value for money and everything else, because if you're presenting it from a rational point of view, people want all that corroborating evidence to show that your product is good, etc. Now, the general public responds from emotion mostly. So, the lurkers in the background might not necessarily be shills. They might be academics who just want to study you. Maybe they're writing a dissertation on what they're defining as your craziness. Because James does make the very valid point that even though on the first sort of the the first hearing of this news of like, well, MIT have done a study and said we're all critical thinkers who are actually doing a good job of looking at the science. There's got to be a scorpion sting in this somewhere, and it is in the this is where he's referring to Canada's CPSO putting out a diktat about how all the doctors have to adhere to the government narrative, basically. But he does sort of put the flag of warning in it. You know, plants a flag of warning in it that this paper, in its conclusion, says, you know, oh, we don't want to, you know, give the impression that we agree with these anti-vaxxer people. We're just showing our, you know, our data, our observations from studying their habits in the wild. Yeah. So this could be spun in such a way, you know, he does mention it at one point. Sorry, I'm scrolling up and down the page a lot because I'm trying to remember where I read certain bits. In Forbes magazine, and I know we did talk about this article, the one about don't do your own research. You know, critical thinking is bad for you because you're a dummy. You're not a scientist. You're not an academic. You know, we don't care if it's raining on your head. You're not allowed to say it's raining unless you've got a qualification that says you're a meteorologist. You know, you've got to have the bit of paper that says you've been through the sausage factory, and they've given you a little paper at the end that says, yes, you are now a meteorologist, so you're allowed to say if it is or is not raining. I call bullshit. But yes, they are doing that kind of spin and that kind of observation of all the goings on in this environment. Remember what I said about hypernormalization, in other words, making it all seem like normal, you know, the new abnormal, and the generating chaos. They want this environment to seem as chaotic as possible so that you feel you can't trust the information that's getting shared around. I think the majority of the disinformation that people are moving around at the moment on the internet comes from the state system itself. They have deliberately injected disinformation into the environment so that you get this cascade ripple effect of people pushing around this information to the point that it gets revealed. It's like, oh no, this is wrong. You know, this is taking us in a bad direction, or it's just scientifically wrong, or it's ideologically wrong, whatever. It's just incorrect. You know, the dis of the information is revealed. They know it has that kind of effect. They do that deliberately. You know, Cass Sunstein, cognitive infiltration. So to the other part of what I was going to screen share, when I sort out my screen so I'm on the right page. Not that one, we want that one. And I'll grab the link while I'm looking at that particular page. Put it in the side chat. This is a video that Jam Noise put up a couple of days ago now. I'm only screen sharing it more just for, you know, show evidence, as it were, to show provenance. That's why I've argued for years of like people mentioning others. This is not about shilling for somebody else. This is about me leaving signposts of provenance for anybody else that comes to this information. You go, where did he get that idea from? Where did he get that information from? It's, oh, I was listening to this person. You know, Jam put up a video showing how she tested the magnet idea. You know, you've probably seen all the videos doing the rounds. There's some people have uploaded like compilations that are 2 hours long of just people showing a magnet stuck to their arm. For just mute it, which I'm only doing because I don't want feedback. But just to show, right, she can quite happily, she has not been vaccinated, she can quite happily stick the magnet on her arm and it's sticking there because skin does that kind of thing. You know, for decades we've been seeing videos of magnetic man who can stick, you know, 20 spoons to himself or whatever the face. It's great. Thanks, Jim. You know, you can stick 20 spoons to himself and he's the magnetic man and all this kind of shit. Your skin has a surface tension which also includes a film of oils and stuff like that. So some objects can gain a temporary adherence to your skin. I'm saying it in a kind of bit of a fucking technical jargon way, but I'm sure people get the point. Yeah, but the system has pushed this idea. It has injected it into this environment. And I've seen a few people try and claim that, oh, well, those magnet videos are all getting censored off YouTube. Therefore, that proves it's true. And that then brings us to the subtitle of the episode, Astro-Turfing. Yeah, that's called Astro-Turfing. YouTube don't give a shit about losing some of those videos. They're already running at a loss. They don't care about losing marketing value of popular videos for a period if it serves the purpose of pushing a propaganda narrative. So YouTube will get the message saying, don't allow any of these videos. They go, right, okay, boss, we add that to the blacklist. Any videos that get uploaded that include that subject get removed, squashed, strike on your channel. Serves the purpose of YouTube to enable them to have a justified reason to get rid of more channels off YouTube. Yeah. Oh, you uploaded one of those videos. Thanks to Jam. Jam makes this point. Yeah. You uploaded one of those videos and your channel's now gone. You made that mistake of putting one of these on your channel, so now we can squash your channel. Goodbye. But the videos are available on all the other platforms. Yeah, people have uploaded 2-hour-long compilations. But all of this is highly questionable. You know, this claim of the magnetic effect. I'm doing a lot of bunny ears, you know, parentheses, bunny ears, speech marks, whatever you want to call them for people who only listen. Yeah. There is a lot of questioning about that. Well, you're watching it on a video, on a social media or internet platform, or some website somewhere, whatever. You cannot claim that is 100% proof. You just can't. I'm sorry. Remember, you know, maybe I hope be safe to say this in the current YouTube atmosphere, maybe. But do you remember several years ago, all the fake beheading videos? And there was a few people that absolutely showed how easy it was to green screen or fake a beheading video. And then you got people creating comparison videos of like, let's look at the original that was on the news media that was promoted as being real, and you know, everybody should be afraid of the terrorists because look, here's a beheading video. And then somebody else recreates it, yeah, in their living room using some green screen software and whatever, and it's like, boom, it looks almost the same. Yeah. The point being, it's like, just because you've seen it on a video is not proof. Look for more corroboration. And as I posted under one of Hugo Talk's videos on Odyssey, because he put up a little video about it, and he was same as me, asking questions about the situation, not saying it is or it isn't or whatever. I posted a comment underneath saying, I do not directly know anyone that could do this test with, because I only directly know one person, and he had his injection quite a while ago. So I know that even if I went and asked him like, hey, stick this magnet on your arm, does it stick? It would be meaningless anyway, because the time period between then and now, if there was anything in the content of the jab, it would have already diffused through his body.
It's more nonsense to bring down the anti-vaxxers, I think, Cookie.
Yes, exactly.
You know.
Yeah, and you know, I said this right when it first started happening, like what, 2-3 weeks ago, and we were first talking about them. I said, I'm highly suspect of this because it doesn't add up. Yeah, this looks like a psyop to make people questioning the contents of the vaccine look crazy. So that now, and this is, I think, the main thing that sort of inspired Jam to put up her video. You know, the BBC have now done a little video package hit piece on exactly this phenomena. Yeah, and their piece, I did go and watch it to check it out, see what they're actually saying about it. Yeah, And it does the classic kind of thing of, oh, you may have seen these videos doing the round on the internet or on Facebook, and they contain this question: are people magnetic? Yeah, and they softly poo-poo it, as the BBC does. You know, they don't just point and laugh, but that is basically what they're doing. They poo-poo the idea and claim that it's just silly. You know, it's disinformation spreading on the internet. So now, guaranteed, in the mainstream media, certainly in the UK, if it's got any connection to the BBC, certainly this would happen. If you bring up a question about, well, you know, is there some kind of dubious content in these jabs? What actually is in them? Could there be something untoward in them? Could there be a chip or nanoparticles or something? You know, they're instantly going to be referred to as, oh, you're one of those crazy magnet people, aren't you? Yeah, just like they did with Flat Earth. We talked about this for years now. It's like, yeah, there's very valid questions about how the science applies to the shape of the thing we're all sharing this living environment with. And yes, it's perfectly accurate and valid to say that the state, including its subsidiaries like Never a Straight Answer, NASA, do not give you the full truth. They just do not. Absolutely. That's easily provable. Therefore, any claims made by them that it is a certain shape or whatever are highly dubious and questionable. But that doesn't mean that it is proof that the Earth is one shape or another. That's not proof. So yes, there's questions, but those questions have been around all along for thousands of years. But this recent incarnation, referred to as the flat Earth, you know, or flurf, as Jeff used to call it. Oh, we got the flurf. Tell them about the flurf. Or bang the table and talk about the flurf. Yeah, that was deliberately injected into this environment so that then at a later date, just like Cameron did, just like Obama did, just like multiple others of the talking head authorities on the screen, they can then use it as a rhetorical weapon. They can turn around and go, oh, this guy said so-and-so about me. Well, oh, yeah, but he's a flat earther, isn't he? Or is it, oh, you got these kind of questions? You think we're doing what with the jabs? Oh, you must be one of those flat earthers. Yeah, they deliberately created it. They astro-turfed the fuck out of that campaign, which is why even now today, there are literally thousands of channels that do nothing but pump out content about flat earth. And they're almost all monetized and selling you merchandise and all that kind of shit. Yeah, that's Astro-Turfing. Yeah. But it was to create the environment such that they could point at that, and for the general populace have been taught to just see that as being craziness. So therefore, there's an automatic connection in their minds, and they just go, that question equals crazy person. So with the magnet thing, they've done exactly the same now. Yeah, so you got questions about the contents of the vaccines, then therefore you equal crazy person who thinks, you know, it's magnetic or something.
Yeah, I knew straight away it was a psyop. I mean, we've seen them over the years, like you mentioned. We've seen so many of these come along and trying to make people look silly and foolish, and they're all pushed by, like you say, this fake building trends even type shit, you know, with your AstroTurf, and you know, that's how they do it and put it into. And it's interesting they pick up on that because they're picking up the most maddest things now. Maybe they wouldn't pick that up a few years ago, they just leave that. Yeah. But now, because it's
so they wouldn't believe that. It's like you want to bet they fucking would.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are in such an emotional state. Again, reference the thing about the, you know, appealing to emotion rather than rationality. Critical thinkers who question all of the shit that's been happening over the last year are applying rationality. The general populace have been taught to respond emotionally. Most advertising is based on emotions. It's sex and violence primarily. Yeah, it appeals to your base drives more than anything else. It's emotional conditioning. And then when you combine that being included in most of media that we consume anyway, like stories, music, movies, etc., most of the populace is stuck in their emotional thinking and responding only. They know that. So they just throw in something they know will kick one of those emotional responses. And when people have had a year plus, more than a year of constant terror, constant fear, be afraid, this thing's going to get you, where does their thinking go almost straight away? Emotional response, emotional reaction.
I don't know, but my Mandela effect is playing up right now. I feel like I've heard this all before in different, many different versions. So yeah.
I was going to say I thought you had a different avatar, but obviously the Mandela effect has changed it at some point.
It's an elephant.
Oh, right. Is it?
Look closely.
I actually feel a bit of sympathy for, well, is it an elephant or a water buffalo? Or something, whatever it is, it's about to get struck. Because years ago,
a pair of lion balls.
Many years ago, one of my cats did something very similar to me, which was
your testicles. I hope not.
Yeah, mid-coitus. Yeah, that got our attention. That was a bit of a emotional reaction, to say the least. So, before we digress into any other silliness, I would also put in not so much a caveat, but I just want to make that kind of like observation note, agnostic observation note, that even though, I agree with what Jams presented in her video and the connection to that BBC hit piece, and this is what I was suspecting, that at some point they were going to come in and do this kind of thing and present it in this kind of fashion. But at the same time, I don't want that effect to have a pushback where they've done it not just to make people seem crazy, they've also done it to dissuade people from asking questions about the contents and whether there is any possible connection to things such as nanoparticles or hydrogel or whatever. There may be no truth to this stuff having magnetic properties such that what people are seeing and experiencing is fake. Even the woman who made one of the first videos that came out on the internet that did the rounds, she did a follow-on video saying, "I'm sorry, that was fake. I did it just to take the piss out of my mate." So she's actually published a retraction, but the whole story has still been blown out of proportion anyway. Astro-Turf to fuck, basically. But I just want to leave that in there. I'm not saying absolutely I know for an absolute fact that there is nothing in there that could do anything like that. I don't. But I also don't trust in any way whatsoever all these videos of just somebody doing this, on a video. So I would want to see that firsthand. Jam's saying she's tested it with some of her friends. If I had the opportunity to do the same, I'd be doing that. I'd want first-hand witness information, not just a video on the internet. That's part of how Astro-Turfing works. They rely on people just accepting the content that's getting pushed in front of them constantly.
That's what they do with you in education right from a kid.
Yeah. Slightly changing tack a little bit, but it does link together. Thanks to Dino for putting the link in for this. So I'm only just showing screen images, screen shares, just to show, visual for the MIT lurkers, so they can see how we are visualizing the data. I'll put the link in the side chat, and then I'll do the screen share for the visual MIT learners, so that they know, they can see nice pretty pictures. This was on it's been re-uploaded on Big Brother Watch. I caught it originally on Talk Radio when they uploaded it. And what do you say about it? It is basically just confirmation of all the shit we've been talking about for the last year. This was from Talk Radio, speaking with Silky Carlo, who is, I suppose you could call a professional activist. Used to be the girlfriend of Charlie Rich. Sorry, I can't even say his name. Charlie Rich. Yeah, I'm sure some people are now referring to. That's again, we could get into Astro-Turfing and talking about shills and all that kind of shit. Anyway, COVID vaccine status feature on NHS app reveals plans for domestic use. And if you watch the content, if you listen to what they're talking about, and this is something again as well, you know, I'm not suggesting that talk radio is some kind of, you know, the place to go that's absolute truth and you can trust them, that they're not doing propaganda. No, they're just another medium outlet. And I've made the observation quite a few times that you can see, I can anyway, I can see the dissonance pounding in their heads. You know, like Julia Hartley Brewer. Some of the stuff she's been coming out with recently, it's like, love, just fucking admit it. You got duped, and you're now getting that anger effect, yeah, because that's usually how most people first respond, just like the bereavement process. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. One of the first things you hit is the anger. You know, once you breach the denial wall, anger is the first response. You can hear a dissonance in some of the things, some of the comments she makes and the questions she asks or whatever. But the point was being made that the NHS, I was going to call it track and trace, but it's not actually called that, is it? Target and neutralize app, whatever. Their track and trace app has now had functionality added to it that basically turns it into a vaccine passport. So it is a vaccine passport, ready to go, doesn't need to be researched, no debate in Parliament, no, like, you know, oh, we're not thinking about that. Oh, we might do it. Oh, we have been researching it for the last year plus, you know, we've been funding projects, developing them for a year. No, this is just, yeah, it's turned on now. But so far, obviously, there's no implementation of any kind of legislation or rules even that institutions or businesses are required to see that version of a passport. As far as I know, the airlines are still using the same kind of setup as they have been for however many months. But this has now been implemented. You know, they cover it a bit in that. They don't really dig into it, and yeah, it's not exactly yeah, I wouldn't agree with everything, and they'd not really get into the core of it or the foundations of it. They're just sort of like, oh, we can't believe it's, oh, you can't believe it's not butter. Oh, you mean you've tried it as well? I can't believe it's not butter either. We've been eating it for 10 years, but I still can't believe it's not butter. It's like, for fuck's sake. As I say, I can see the dissonance raging in their heads like a ringing bell, and yet they're still there saying the same shit.
She's been around for quite a while, hasn't she?
Yeah, Silky Carlo, yeah.
2010, I think she was.
You
talked about those lurkers and being aware of people who are just like gathering information, and then they go and work for an organization like that, and then come out with that kind of shit 10 years later.
Cognitive infiltration, Astro-Turfing, COINTELPRO.
Yeah.
From $1 million.
They go to these events, these camping events and stuff, you know, and they go around and they'll. Because that was back in, that's 10 years ago now, or 12, 11 years ago, when all these types of things were beginning to build, these types of conscious sort of gatherings of people and stuff, and people who wanted to get away from the mainstream sort of festival shite that you know, you apparently have to go to it. It's like, no, you know, you create your own. People were creating their own back then, and still are today, actually. It's still happening. It hasn't gone away, but it's interesting that her face pops up again. All these years later, you think, God, there you go.
It didn't really go away. She just went a bit more in the background in terms of a lot of the demographics that we're often looking at. She became more of just a traditional political activist.
Well,
she distanced herself from her connection to Charlie Rich and all that kind of other connection, you know, all that situation. And she went more towards I'm a genuine political activist and journalist. Yeah.
Now get your passport app, otherwise you can't go out of the country.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. They're doing some good work there to take more freedoms off you, aren't they?
There's it makes another interesting connection as well to the Astro-Turfing.
Yeah.
Which was why when I saw the link that Dino shared, it was like, yeah, cheers, mate, because I'd never thought to put that in, but there's another example of how these things connect to Astro-Turfing. Yeah, making shit seem popular, and that includes the fake opposition. The steam valving fake opposition groups that get inevitably set up. The system will never allow there to not be a controlled opposition. They will always set up an opposition to make sure they've got control of it. So that's another element which I had in my notes. Just to mention, I don't want to go into it deep because you end up getting dragged into, well, who do you think is okay and who do you think is a shill and all that kind of shit. But there's a few people, one person in particular, who at the moment is getting quite popular because he's good at spotting connections between people from video content, right? And he's been pointing out some kind of a coincidental, I'm saying that sarcastically, coincidental groupings of certain faces and personalities, like so-and-so will be seen on camera with another so-and-so,
Mm-hmm.
And he's good at spotting those things and making that observation. But I went and checked out some of his stuff on the recommendation of someone who's like, this is the same old shit. This is like the kind of shit that was doing the rounds 8-9 years ago. He's a shill, he's okay. You should only listen to him. And if you disagree with me, then you're a shill as well.
That's coming around again in a cycle, isn't it?
To
try and hijack everything again.
And this was why I wanted to make this point about things like the magnet situation. There is this common tactic where they want to get people fixated on who is the external authority that you choose to believe in. Because that's what it comes down to, belief, trust. Do you trust this person such that you accept the information or whatever it is they're saying to you, their rhetoric, their argument, whatever? That's what it really comes down to. And they know that thanks to the internet largely, helping to disseminate information, just like the effect of the printing press, they know that more of the general public, not a big portion, but a larger number than there used to be, now have access to information and ideas and discussions with others that enable them to see the flaws and failings and corruption of the system itself. So in other words, having that kind of shit revealed is detrimental and dangerous to the status quo. So they want to, confuse that situation. Hence, we get things like the injection of crazy ideas, cognitive infiltration, the Astro-Turfing to make people chase after certain directions, and the repeated application of a logical fallacy that appeals to emotion by presenting people characters or caricatures, often, of somebody that they're supposed to like and think is trustworthy. So you should trust this guy. He's a veteran. He fought for your country. Look, he waves the flag on every video. He's at all the protests. He's always at the front arguing with the coppers. He's always getting arrested. So he must be trustworthy, mustn't he? This is the same kind of tactics they do again and again and again. And that would include things like Astro-Turfing. So we get loads of other channels come up that, don't necessarily have anything else to corroborate who they are or what they're doing. But those other channels will all pump out content saying how that first guy that I was just talking about is like such a great guy. He's so trustworthy. You should accept everything he says to you.
There are also Astro-Turfing variants. Mutants.
Yeah. The triple mutant. That'd be a good place to mention that. Beware of the YA man flu. Now they're threatening people with the new triple mutant variant. It's like, look at the definition of the word mutant and explain to me the word redundant. When you try and apply like double mutant, triple mutant, look up the definition of the word mutant. It's mutated. However many times that mutation may have taken place before you got to the point where you then observe it and say, this is a mutation, it's idiotic, and again it's making a very subtle NLP appeal to people's emotional response, because a rising number indicates a higher likelihood of threat. So after the triple mutant YA man variant, there's going to be the quadruple mutant, and then there'll be the septuple mutant, and on and on and on it will go. Eventually there'll be the uber megaplex mutant. It'll be the ultimate terror. Now that just to mention as well, I want to screen share another image. The question about contents of the jab, and people having questions about contents of the jab, and those questions being derailed by things such as it's magnetic. Look at me, I can stick a spoon to my forehead. That's not quite accurate, but I'm saying it to take the piss. I need to find that image. Where was it?
I always say
it's a lot like the fake snow. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's a lot like the fake snow scam they had.
Yeah.
I was saying, saying it for years. Don't worship gurus and worship these. See them as what they are, teachers, and we learn off everybody. And it's just kind of putting people on pedestals, and then just that leads a lot of people along down down this type of fake, like you say, or Astro-Turfing. And that's the people should be aware of that and do the work on themselves, I always say, and don't get sucked in. Don't swim around. Don't get stuck or caught in the net. Oh, that's just so corny. Don't get trapped, basically, and that's what they're doing. They put little traps out for you, and they've been doing that. I know as long as I've been on line over the years, and seeing how they work this type of operation, how they do it on the people. And it's even easier now because they've got people in a state of fear as well. So they seem to, like the BBC promoting this type of story with the magnet, is just, it really does say that, they are going out to, like really hammer down on anti-vaxxers or propagandarize. We said this months ago, it's what we said. That's what's happening. And they're showing you stories from like Saudi Arabia, how they're getting tougher with their people out there and banning them from buildings and stuff. But interesting, in Israel, they've lifted their ban, which is interesting. So,
we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we will move away from the doom, because I'm talking about how they present to you as doom. But
yes,
this is something I've heard a few people talk about. This content, SM102, which is a chemical compound, but I've also used to be Kafka Winston World, a YouTube channel, as they call Never Lose Truth. I found this on a Odyssey channel because I don't think she could get away with putting this on YouTube. She was looking at one of the papers that studied and described what this particular compound is. And I was looking at it while she was, talking about it, and I was thinking, I'll show that screen image because of this particular product description. But thanks, Taz, she'd already got a screen grab of it. So it's like, cool, that's exactly what I wanted. Because this is to make that point about, could the whole magnetic charade storyline be to cover up things like this? SM102 is an ionizable amino lipid. Right, ionizable, as far as I know, if I'm getting it right, people in the chat let me know if I'm wrong, means that it could be magnetized, or it could have extra ions added to it such that it could be influenced by the use of magnetics. Right?
Yes.
So it could be
charge in it. Yeah, charge.
Yeah.
In it.
That's what ionized means. It has an added charge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's ionizable, probably because it connects to this luciferase stuff. Now, if you remember in Billy Bob's concept of the quantum dot, they were going to include this luciferase compound because it illuminates. So in other words, you could have a what would be in effect a subdermal patch that would, this was their concept, it would steadily time release whatever the pharmaceutical was that you wanted, if it was a vaccine or whatever, something else. And with the use of the luciferase, when activated or when checked with like a UV light or some other specific frequency light, blue or whatever, it would illuminate to show like how much content's remaining or how many doses applied or whatever, data to do with the use of the thing. So I'm wondering, if this SM102, if this is ionizable and is part of luciferase mRNA to enable the lipid nanoparticles, which causes hepatic luciferase expression. I'm not sure the use of the word hepatic there, but the luciferase expression I'm interpreting as meaning that it will cause it to glow. So in other words, it becomes part of the mice's biological structure, that when passed through certain light frequencies, it would glow. Why is this in the jab? Is the whole magnetic charade to disguise and detract and misdirect, disinformation, to misdirect people away from a lot more of this information that's coming about what is in this stuff? I've made the speculation about some of the other things. This was a different screenshot, but shows that it's got it in there. Yeah.
I mean, Denny points out, your blood's full of iron. It should be.
Yeah, but it's not enough to attract anything less than quite a powerful magnet.
Yeah.
You're talking really seriously powerful, not the kind of thing that is commercially available to the general public.
Well, that would have been happening for years. People pick magnets up; they would have known that was something. But it doesn't. It doesn't work. And I think this has all been, like I say, psyop anyway. All this, getting people going, and with the BBC involved now, it just goes to show, they are, picking up on these things and rolling with them, and then switching them back round. Propaganda, put the, keep putting it out there, keep putting it out there. Other nations are getting stricter. Things are happening, and coerce the rest of us to go and get it.
Yeah, I will come back to some of the memes like we usually do.
Yeah.
But it was mainly just to show that one, make the point about even though the magnet thing may highly likely, more than likely, be some kind of psyop charade, that shouldn't preclude people from asking questions about the content of what's in the thing. That's the whole argument from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We knew they were going to try and derail things, and this magnetic thing seems to have been one of their attempts to do so.
Yeah.
It's a double whammy for them, because it gives them another thing that they can point at and say, look how crazy these people are. And also it puts people off from asking that kind of question. They're like, excuse me, what's this thing here on the ingredient list?
Well, they did the same with Trump, with all his cures and ideas, and on the chlorine and the UV lights. Yeah, he had a couple of those, but all of those were like ridiculed, like, So it's very similar to this. So there's probably something behind it, but it's not magnets.
No,
right? Magnets that a magnet sticks to your arm is not a problem. It's not the problem.
Could it be gene therapy? Maybe that's what it should be, isn't it? She said that back in the day. It's not a vaccine.
That has now been officially admitted. Oh man, who was it? It might have been UK Column today. If you check the latest episode from today, I think they get into that a little bit. There was documents, official admission that this, it is a medical treatment. It is not a vaccine. It was from I think the MHR.
I've seen a French Nobel Prize winner say that. It's him, but
no, this is coming from the officialdom itself. It's just it's been released in such a way that it's not being made generally public knowledge. It's not being talked about in the newspapers. It might have been on the Off Guardian. It was either the CDC or the MHRA.
FDA, maybe?
No, not. It might have been. It was certainly one of the ones that has a hand in the approval of medications. Yeah, and they were saying like we're still debating how this is going to achieve approval because it doesn't fit into the normal definition. Because it's not a vaccine. It's a
vaccine is also only once. You administrate it and done, right? It's not that you have to get a booster shot or a yearly whatever. So it's not a vaccine in no way.
Yeah.
No.
Let me just check my notes, see if there's anything I meant to say that I've forgotten about from that general output. Not really. Only moving on to the next thing, which like I say, that sort of spent over an hour sort of making the point about don't get caught up in all the bullshit about the shills. Yes, there are shills out there. Please don't be naive into thinking there's not. You should be keeping your questions about everybody, not just blindly accepting whatever you see on the internet or on the news or in the newspapers, etc., etc., etc. That's just a given to me. I hope that people get that by now. I know that people have been here for a while, regular listeners, etc. They know that. Then they're not fooled by that usual kind of bullshit argument. Like, oh, well, you can't listen to him because he's a so and so. It's like, right, okay, mate. I'm looking at the information. If you want to get fixated with the character on the screen, that's up to you. If you want to attribute all your acceptance of authority to his face just because you like the way he looks and he sounds okay, you like the cut of his jib, then that's going to be your problem, not mine.
People fall down that hole every time, don't they? And then realise, So it's a time to be, if that happens to you, or it's happened to you over the years, then that's where you learn from it, don't you? And then you see it better, and you don't get sucked in, and you see what people are like anyway, and you make a more balanced judgment on things, rather than just going, like you say, with the first thing that you see.
It's something that's now got to the point where it's helped the system a lot more, because now that they have sort of fractured the general grouping of people, and they've sort of caused most people just sort of spread out onto all these other platforms, these up and coming independent platforms. That's enabled them to push more people off YouTube, and also at the same time created fertile ground for them to do Astro-Turfing tactics. Because like I described with the magnetic thing, I saw people claiming that, it's been censored on YouTube, therefore that proves it's true. And I was just like, mate, if I read just your sentence there, that in that comment, I would take that as an indication that you're one of the people pushing this. Because that kind of statement is idiotic and makes it sound like a sales pitch. If you think something is automatically proven to be true just because you don't find it on a mainstream platform, no, that's not applying critical thinking. That's applying belief systems. Hopefully we get past that stage, and that in a sort of steady, slow progress, hopefully we get to the point now where, like we were talking about on Wednesday, how do you deal with that situation of there always has been, I would argue, always has been since people have been people as we know them now. There's always been that situation that if there's an opportunity for someone to exploit others by tricking them or fooling them and gaining profit through that trickery, there's going to be people that do that kind of thing. In other words, there's been shills and snake oil salesmen and provocateurs and rumor mongers and whatever you want to look at. You can look through history and find all different ways that they were labeled. That's been true for time immemorial. If you come into this environment and think that just because you see something on a particular channel, that automatically makes it, that's proof, that's true, I just accept it without any thinking for myself. That's the problem. How do we deal with that problem of, if you allow it to perpetuate, you're forever forced into a position where you end up having to be somebody else's authority for them? Because the way I've tried to describe it before in an analogy, in a metaphor, is that if you equate the search for truth or true information to be like the ocean of reality, and you have to swim out into that ocean to find those truths, the majority of the population don't know how to swim. They've never been taught to swim. So you end up with this perpetuation of the authority of the system, because the system provides lifeguards that stand on the beach and watch the people in the water, and when they start to flounder or get into trouble, they wade in and rescue them and take them back to the shore and go, see, we told you shouldn't have swum over in that area, it's dangerous there. You know, there's really weird information in that area that you won't be able to cope with, so you stay here with us and we'll protect you and look after you. Whereas really, if you want to help people empower themselves and be able to see through all this bullshit and to learn discernment, then you don't set yourself up as another lifeguard. That's completely counter to your attempt to help people learn and empower themselves. That works against you, because you just perpetuate that situation of people looking to an authority figure to cognitively rescue them. It's like, I don't know how to deal with this information. It's so crazy. It's twisting my melon, man. Yeah, twisting your melon to the point that your life suddenly stops. Have you stopped existing because you looked at some really weird ideas on the internet? No, you're still alive. You're still breathing. You're still pooping. Yeah, the government's testing your poop now to see if they can find the virus in your poop.
Well, I heard that. Someone said that today to me. I thought, oh, here we go. That's where they're getting all these variants then, isn't it?
They've been doing it for a while, yeah, for a good few months, or middle of last year, actually. I think they started doing it. Again, we talked about it at the time, yeah.
You have a choice as well. Remember that. Yeah. You know, you have a choice, believe it or not.
But I came up with that way of trying to describe it, inspired by the classic of, you know, it's no good giving a man a fish. You know, you can feed a man for a day by giving him a fish, or you teach him to fish and then he can feed himself for his lifetime. It's the same principles apply to your cognitive use and your cognitive sovereignty. You can either constantly be rescuing people and set yourself up as an authority for them, which is just what the system does. The system says there's all this information in the world, but you're only allowed to look at this much, because we know, well, this is what they tell you. Yeah, we know that if you look at this bit here, you'll go crazy. And we don't want you to go crazy because we love you. We want you to be with us all the time, you know, petting you like a little pet. If you perpetuate that, you will never, ever get away from this problem. Never. This problem will just change. It will morph its shape, but it will remain, and it will never be done with.
Because we're not changing, so we deserve it. In a sense, we're not changing. And
it comes back to that inner work, that self-work, that self-realization, shadow work, etc.
Third party again, representatives, people just have them there, religious or financial or whatever it is they've got as their thing to hang on to, and that's what we've got to start realizing that's wrong. Sorry, go on.
It's the same reason why I get angsty and why I've talked against all of the major religions, or well, really all the systems of religion, because it's the same middleman effect. Yeah, it's the same middleman stepping between you and the divine, whatever you define the divine as, and telling you that you're not capable of knowing the divine directly. Only through them can you ever commune with the divine. Only through them will you ever have knowledge of the divine. That immediately creates an infrastructure of manipulation based on a claim of authority that's non-existent, that's not real, that's not true. Yeah, it's the same thing applied by the state. We've talked about that. Just see Stewie put it in the chat, nanny state. We've talked about that kind of nanny state effect, but also there is that state religion effect.
Cookie, we got a little mic issue on your end.
Have you? Is it starting to robot?
Crackling and crackling and.
Hang on. Right. Unmuting it a few times.
Sorry, I muted myself.
And it's gone. It's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Cool.
crackling like a bit. I think you just needed to twiddle the old thingy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fading away. I've had it for several years. It needs
Mm.
replacing, which I will do soon enough. Yeah, the state religion. The state is the religion. It's exactly the same principle of a claim to authority that is not real. It just enables a middleman. That, yes, it can be argued there's some benefits from that structure, such that you can help and care for people who are incapable of caring or caring for or helping themselves. You can help those who are unfortunate in life, etc. You know, you can protect the less fortunate from the worst of reality and stuff like that. Yes, there can be benefits, but on the whole, it leads to a process of centralization of power and attracts the worst kind of people in your society because they want to put their hands on those levers of power. So you see the problem. How do you deal with the problem? I mentioned last week about Mark Passio's recent upload talking about moral relativism, and the problem in the as he calls it, the anarchy movement kind of thing. But I would argue that it comes down to that ability to deal with information, full stop. Moral relativism is part of that, yes, absolutely, because it's learning discernment of what reality is. Not what you believe it is, not what you would like it to be, but what it actually is. And this is a philosophical principle that goes far back in time. It's encoded in various ways. It's in the Hermetic principles. See reality for what it is. And that is, it's questionable as whether that is actually ever really possible for us as living beings, because we are always looking through a prism of our own subjective point of view. But reality is objective. This week I thought of titling this week's episode "One Mind, Two Worlds," because we do live in at least two worlds. Yeah. I know I've made this kind of argument before. Really, we live in multiple layered worlds that are like a Venn diagram. They're interwoven with each other, but on a very reduced, simple principle fashion. It's one mind trying to exist in two worlds. There is the objective truth of reality. That's one world. That's the world you exist in, that you experience in. And then there is your perception of what that reality is and how you interpret it and how you deal with it, how you interact with it and others that you encounter within it. That is a completely separate world to the objective reality. The system relies on crafting illusions and persuading us that the illusion is the real world, when it's not. What they are describing is created for ideological and cultural and social reasons. Please refer back to what I said earlier about that article, Corbett, covering the MIT study paper. Mm-hmm. They acknowledge that the scientific consensus is culturally influenced. In other words, what may be considered normal now was not considered normal 1,000 years ago, and same going the other direction in time. People's attitudes change, societies come and go, empires crumble and rise, etc., and that alters the perceived environment. And I think this is important, because when it comes back to things like people talking about making a change to this system, and you'll often hear the kind of suggestions, I'll call them that your perception molds reality. And we get into discussions about things like The Secret and, the use of mind over matter and all that kind of thing. And so, yes, I do agree with that. I do think it is true. I think there is truth to it, that being electromagnetic beings that we are, living in an electromagnetic environment, yes, of course, we have an influence on how it emanates. It's just actually having the ability to do what some people call like magic. That's something completely different, right? What you're describing is a fantasy world perception that has been given to you by the system itself, which is in and of itself part of that fantasy world generated by your perceptions. So what are they what magic are they actually teaching you? Yeah, can you summon fireballs? No. But can you do other things through the use of what would be defined as magic? Yes.
When I light my farts.
They go boom.
Yeah. Summon at will. Yeah. But I think it's important when we're talking about that kind of, doing the inner work, trying to work on yourself so that you develop that discernment and use of critical thinking and applying objective observation rather than just subjective emotional reaction, etc., etc. But as part of that, you need that foundation, like Passio describes it. You need those foundations of things like a recognition of what concepts like moral relativism are and how they can be detrimental to your experience of this reality. Learning the definitions of things such as it is almost never true that the argument is one or the other. You've got to choose this guy or you've got to choose this guy. That is almost never true or applicable to true reality, to the objective reality. The most applicable thing is the consubstantiation of reality. It's not either or, it's both and at the same time. So like the arguments that, I've used this example for donkey's years, the arguments of free will and determinism. It's not one or the other, it's both and. The external world is deterministic because it's like a mirror. It just reflects how we poke it. Think of the surface of water. The surface of that water will remain perfectly calm until you start poking it. And then when you poke it, it reacts. It has a deterministic reaction. But what made you choose to start poking that glassy, smooth pond water? That's free will. You chose to do that. So the two exist at the same time. They're not separate. Reality is not one or the other. So, do you believe in free will? No, I believe in determinism, mate. Oh, yeah. No, it's not one or the other. It's both at the same time. This is the same. Who do you listen to? Why are you trying to listen to one or the other? You should be listening to both sides of the argument, not one or the other. How is it going to work if you try and listen to a conversation where you can only hear one of the people? Do you think you're going to end up with a somewhat twisted or corrupted or biased perception of what the conversation was about? Yeah, because you're only hearing one of the people. You're not hearing the both sides, the to and fro. So I think it's certainly relevant when we're sort of making that, I'm saying we, the royal we, we're making those connections to things like Astro-Turfing and cognitive manipulation to push you to emotional responses of like, do you like this guy? He's really nice. Look, here's a video of him giving money to poor people. That makes him trustworthy, doesn't it? No, fucking don't.
There's lots of other things go with that. I mean, Roscoe Pickerchain puts it nicely. Yeah, truth, honesty, integrity, honor, sacrifice, dignity, humility. But they've all been denied. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Discarded by the majority of peoples in the West. I mean, that's how they've played that. I mean, to be, all those things is hard. It is difficult. It don't make it easy to be, the way they've set the world up. To have truth, honesty, integrity, and honor. Because they make people, they mold people's minds with stupid shit and things get changed. And in the West here, particularly, like you've mentioned, all the Astro-Turfing stuff, it's all there to, keep you away from the truth, the honesty of yourself, integrity, your honor. I mean, people have these things. They're all in us. They're all in us. We've got good in us and bad. But it's just being able to see that programming going on, that manipulation of yourself. And like you say, the inner world is everything you need to know. I mean, your dreams might be telling you things you don't understand or realize what they're actually really about. But they're giving you some important guidance and information. Could be anything going on in your life at the time, but dreams are very, linked to that kind of thing. And they might be obscure or abstract, but you can tend to work them out if you know about symbologies and energy and stuff like that. You know, you can tend to work someone's dream out. So yeah,
I think they're very, very applicable.
yeah.
It's just it's subjective when you come to most of what people refer to as like interpretation, dream interpretation.
Yeah.
What do the symbols mean? What does the imagery mean? Stuff like that. You can buy books on that kind of thing. Yeah,
there's all sorts out there.
But I think you cannot put that into a singular definition because it's highly subjective, if not totally subjective. One person's interpretation of what a particular symbol means in their dream may be different to another person's interpretation of that symbol. You know, it may have different relevance to connections to things in their lives. You know, one person might see a symbol and think, "Oh, that represents my daughter." Another person might see the same symbol and think, "Oh, well, that represents my pot plant." Yeah, the interpretation can be highly subjective to the experiencer.
But I think if you put it, go on.
It's something where I'd recommend people look into things like archetypes and Jungian archetypes in particular, which is where my thinking goes primarily. I agree with a lot of what he was talking about in that respect. Yeah, there are regularities and patterns and commonalities in dreams, and it's just a matter of you figuring out what those different elements are relevant to in your life, in your subjective experience of them. So, for example, again, using a kind of simplistic example, you might dream of encountering somebody who's really good at doing magic, you know, like we've just been taking the piss about summoning fireballs and whatever, you know, somebody like a wizard from a classic fantasy story, yeah? But somebody else might see that kind of archetypal persona as represented by a different kind of imagery. You know, it's culturally relevant. What we may interpret as being a wizard, you know, big pointy hat and the kind of Gandalf figure, somebody from a different culture would see that kind of that archetype represented in a different way. But the key here, and this is what I say, Jungian archetypes, the key here is what is the archetype representing? Yeah, and that's where I find you get into that correlation between things like the tarot symbology.
I was about to mention tarot, yeah,
which is based on this kind of ancient knowledge about archetypal personality groupings.
Then you're going into more of the energy work, aren't you? Mental
again,
work.
Yeah, it's back to energy again. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, but you see what I mean? You know, I don't think you can buy. Well, not to my knowledge. There might be books out there that have done this kind of approach, have said, like, you know, the way you see it may be subjective, but it's showing you this kind of archetype. You know, hopefully somebody has. But I know that there's a lot of books out there that are just like they're New Age church bullshit.
Yeah,
it's like, here's a list of images you'll see in your dreams, and these images mean this. Yeah, you know, you see a cat, it means bad luck.
Yeah.
Fuck off with your tabloid bullshit. Yeah. That cat could represent an archetype that has much more relevance to that person than it means you're going to have bad luck. It's fucking idiotic. It's childish.
Yeah, that was to put fear in people, though. If you think about it, you know, if you have these sorts of, because mention, you know, the witch hunter trials back a few hundred years back and things like that, you know, to put fear into people, so they would just dismiss them, not go further with them. And forget who they are eventually, you know, through the generations, you know, as they've
potentially dealing with non-physical entities.
Yeah.
If you get, I'll talk about it from my point of view. I got to a stage where I started to see and realize how everything in reality is energy, basically interacting with itself. And most of what we, if not all of what we experience, is frequency oscillation within that medium of what we refer to loosely as energy. But it's not, strictly speaking, it's not electricity as we define electricity. It's not even plasma. It's beyond both. It's all of that. Yeah,
it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's the spiritual energy. There's something out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not something for nothing. It's something out of nothing. And when I started to realize that was when I thought, well, yeah, all this stuff is actually interconnected in such a way that if you can see if you can discern things like those archetypal resonances, why is it, why did I graduate towards, I don't mean in a sense of like I got a diploma or whatever. I mean in a sense of I gradually came to this situation where I've ended up looking like I do now. Yeah, and a lot of people have tried to say, oh, you think you're Gandalf? And it's like, no, I don't. If you know anything about the archetypes in Lord of the Rings, and I say archetypes deliberately, apply some Jungian psychology to the way Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings, because I think it is very important and relevant. I'm not Gandalf. So if you're looking for an archetype that represents looking like this, I'm not Gandalf. But there are those kind of archetypal resonances that are highly important within your experience of this life, and the way you encounter them and how you encounter them, how many of them you encounter. If you start making observations of this, you'll realize that, well, actually, there's something to this. There's only really so many personality types. And then you get this kind of individuation based on nuances of personal experience through life experience or cultural environment, things like that. But when it comes down to it, it's almost like it correlates to that kind of zodiacal wheel of personality types. And again, this is about energy and the resonance within that energy. Why do certain people become certain archetypes? Yeah, it's part of that, the way the energy moves based on those resonances. Maybe I'm not describing it very well. It's quite a complex thing to try and describe.
Yeah.
As Ken Wheeler calls it, simplex. At its foundation, it is actually quite a simple thing that's going on. Yeah, if you wrote it down as like a formula that you'd use in physics calculations or whatever, or astrophysics, it's actually quite simple, the formula. But the fractal ripples that it creates become so complicated, infinitely complicated, that trying to describe that, it fails for words. It goes beyond words to the ability to describe. And that's why we get such the most amazing inspiration, especially emotional. Interestingly enough, most people are aware of this on an emotional level, because if it's really good, it connects with your emotions first, not your rationality. But it's why we get so much absolutely inspiring and amazing creativity and art of all forms. Yeah, music, drawing, painting, whatever, all forms of art, because it is that infinite expression of infinite nuance. But it all comes from a very basic, simple formula. So simplex. Yeah. So I like the way he describes it like that. He's really good for this kind of information. If you haven't checked him out before, I will find a link for his channel while I'm thinking about it. That's pretty much all I had in my notes, apart from a mention about I put in the subtitle, Astro-Turfing, it's a game for all your family. Because the narrative is all about getting control over your ability to have your own kingdom. Your own kingdom is the kingdom of your lineage, of your family, of your bloodline, your genetics. This is why they're so obsessed with getting a database of everybody's DNA. That is the definition of kingdom, in my opinion. Yeah. So when I'm saying like it's a game for all your family, they want to usurp your kingdom from you by putting you into a new abnormal environment that means that you will no longer be part of a family. You'll be individuated and isolated. You're not allowed to visit granny because you might cause her to get ill and die. And at the same time, They are either encouraging or putting in place policies and attitudes and narratives that discourage people from procreating. So your progeny are no longer going to exist. So your family doesn't exist. And as a part of that, it's obviously connected to things like family planning. Family planning is connected to ideologies like eugenics. So shout out to some people who've mentioned some of this kind of stuff recently. Really graceful put up a video about Billy Bob Gates and his
Evil agenda. Evil agenda, I was going to say.
I was going to say his convenient divorce.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, but as Pete pointed out weeks ago, maybe this is just careful tactical positioning by the two of them that, like, oh, well, if they take you down, I'll still be around, right? Manlinda will still be around to carry on the Gates Foundation legacy, their philanthropic legacy, Could be. And also, shout out to Please Stop the Ride, who uploaded a video about Singapore shills. And again, it was just like, it's quite synchronistic this week of like people posting a few comments about shills and seeing some content uploads, like, doing that kind of thing of like, oh, this guy's a shill. Look, he's been caught on camera buddying up with this other guy. But also, she found this promo video from a company trying to sell their fake chicken crap. And now in Singapore, they've made it legal to sell this as consumption. It's okay for public consumption. So in other words, they can start mass producing this lab-grown fake meat. They make a point of saying how they don't like the label lab-grown.
That's what it is.
But they still want to call it meat. And it's like, well, it's not really meat, is it? But also it is accurate to call it lab-grown. So, you're talking about marketing shit here, aren't you? Which is that, that's why she was calling it Singapore shills, because they had all these influencers saying, oh, isn't it yummy? Oh, look, here's a picture of it. Oh, look, it's great. Yeah. Astro-Turfing. So, please be aware of all that kind of shit is still ongoing. The media environment most definitely has shills and agents and provocateurs and snake oil salesmen and the whole spectrum of lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So when you're trying to make your way down that yellow brick road of truth, even that analogy has got so many problems with it. The Wizard of Oz. Definitely. Be aware that you're going to encounter those kind of people and those kind of situations. If you think that, as is happening now, we get a lot of coverage of live events from people who are on the scene, live streaming, right? And as I said the other week before there was the London gathering again, I said, if you've got your own camera or smartphone or whatever it is you use, take some footage for yourself.
Yeah.
Not to put on YouTube or whatever, not to try and monetize or make money, but just so that you've got something to show other people. Like, look, this is my first-hand witness experience. I was there. Here's a video clip of me there watching all the thousands of people march through London. So, because when there's an opportunity to make money, there's going to be people there to make money. So if you think that a lot of these modern streamer channels, they're there just because they're for the truth, they're for the people. No, they're there because it's an opportunity to make money. I'm not saying all of them are like that, but some of them are. So it's no surprise to me when somebody pops up and says, oh, did you know so-and-so channel? He's only there because he's earning tons of money from monetizing the videos. It's like, yeah, of course he is. But I'm watching his videos with no adverts on because they use an ad blocker to block all the adverts. So I'm not being forced to see the adverts, and I get to see some live footage coverage. I don't rely on just one person. I look at a few channels. I look for stuff on the main news media to see if they've covered it. I hope there's more and more people starting to realize they need to do that kind of thing now. They don't just go to one-stop shop for the truth and pay their subscription and go, I paid me 12 quid this month, so I've been told the truth. Yeah. You need
Good idea that, film it all, and put it up on your, or what you can still put it up on your channel, but it doesn't have to go public, just to show people, And
I'm not saying people shouldn't earn a living out of doing their coverage. In the system we live in at the moment, you need to have bits of paper to hand over to get your food and all that kind of stuff. So if people earn a living by providing that kind of coverage for viewers on the internet, fair play to them. To me, or what I'm concerned about is the content worth you getting paid? Are you just re-uploading somebody else's work and then trying to claim it as your own and stick a fucking price tag on it? Or are you actually, if you're there on the site, you obviously have to pay for the equipment, you got to pay for the internet subscriptions and whatever to upload it. So fair play. You want to get paid, you're providing a good service, people pay you for it. You provide something that people want, they'll pay you for it. If you just selling them shit, don't be surprised when somebody comes and turns your money tables over, What ad block? I just seen question in the chat. Hi, Joe Bates. I'm not sure which particular one it's called. I'll just have a quick check if I can see it in the name. Ad blocker ultimate on Firefox. I've found it to be the most consistently reliable and regularly updated. So like even when YouTube does its updates or whatever, the people who do that particular one update it quick enough. Or fairly quickly anyway. I've been using that for quite a few years now. It's always been reliable. There's only once or twice when I've had a banner advert on the side of the YouTube homepage, but that was it. And even that was only there for a few days, and then they'd updated it and that was gone again. So, yeah. And hopefully more and more people will gravitate towards platforms like Odyssey. And the only reason I'm recommending Odyssey is because it has that blockchain setup. So you've got a bit more security and reliance on the fact that your stuff is going to be decentralized and it's going to have a higher survival rate against the censorship in this internet environment. But also because you don't necessarily have to be subjected with adverts on that site. You can ad block on that site as well. And the people creating content can earn their money by the way the bit library coin thing works. So for those people that just want to do stuff to generate money, it's a way for you to do that. And for those that just want to be able to see the message and they're not want to get dragged into an argument about the messengers, the content's there for you to view. YouTube used to be like that, but now it's just mostly a big pile of poop. The government are going to come along and test it to see if it's got the virus in it. Maybe that'll be the next stage. We'll have the influencers all coming out and saying YouTube has the virus. If you watch any videos on YouTube, you're going to get the virus. Right, okay. Thank you for letting me waffle for quite a while. We're just coming up to the hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to find one or two of the silly memes for us to finish up with. If I can find one of the funny ones in the chat. Yeah, that one will do for a start. And as we usually do, also don't believe all the bullshit, folks. Don't believe all the hype. Certainly be careful of the Astro-Turfing. Avoid face-to-face contact. Yeah. Avoid the hype. Avoid the face-to-face contact. But it's not a reality that everybody just believes the government and accepts all the information on the news media and whatever. There's a lot of people asking questions. There's a lot of people sharing information. There's a lot of people who have the ability to use their minds to apply some critical thinking, and they're not necessarily reacting with an emotional knee-jerk response. So if you bother to actually invest some energy, the effort it takes to go and look for yourself, you will find out that what they had to send an MIT academic project study team to discover, the majority of us are applying a hell of a lot more critical thinking and logic and rationality to this situation than the mass of the general populace, which have been indoctrinated into having a knee-jerk emotional reaction. You've got academic validation for what we've been doing here for years. Even with that caveat that they were forced, because of the political narrative, they were forced to tack on to the end of that paper saying, oh, well, we don't endorse the anti-vaxxers, but at least they're applying good rationality to their arguments. It just makes no fucking sense. So you're a scientist, so therefore you agree with science, you want to promote the scientific method, but you can't endorse somebody who's applying the scientific method. These smells a political narrative. Sorry, I'll just flick through the images while I say thanks, folks, for joining us.
Cheers, Cookie. Thank you. And everyone in the chat as well. Hello. And hello to Nick as well. Saw you in there before. Hello.
And thanks everyone for giving us your attention for a couple of hours. That's a good meme. I like that. Thanks to Dr. Rock shared that. That's a good one, that is. And I meant to read it out as well, but it's a bit late now, so I'll leave it. There was another quote from C.S. Lewis that Days had put in that I thought was definitely worth reading. Do it on Wednesday if I don't forget. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. Henry David Thoreau. Again, thanks to Nick for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, we will be back Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel to do the Reality Chat at approximately the same time, 8 p.m. GMT, BST, Doobie-Doo, NFT, all the acronyms. And Steve Tagoose will be on Thursday night on the Mystery Show, 8 p.m. GMT, BST, etc., ETC, etc. I'm sorry I didn't catch up with stuff in the chat. If you were asking me questions or whatever, sorry I missed it. I was just too busy rattling on. And I didn't want to misinterpret anything because I was only getting half the conversation part way through. You know what it's like. So thanks for running the chat, for getting involved, and we will see you again soon. And don't forget, there's lots of choices out there. You don't just have to listen to us. Go and listen to somebody else. Go outside and do something less boring instead. Catchies.
Bye.
Cheers.